The house music genre seems to be making a comeback with brand new releases by both Drake and Beyonce. But what exactly is it, and how do you make it? All that and more right after this. Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am your host, Vortex, from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And if you are new to the channel, what we do here is release weekly videos teaching people how to produce music on their iOS device. Now recently, we have been getting into some electronic music genres here on the channel with the release of our completely free Essentials House sample pack and a whole contest centered around that. Now you may be wondering, where did this house music genre come from and why does it sound so familiar? Well, according to Wikipedia, the house genre was first pioneered by DJs and producers in Chicago. We're talking about super talented people such as Frankie Knuckles, Ron Hardy, Jesse Saunders, and of course later on Larry Heard, and many others. It later expanded to other big cities such as New York, and then became a worldwide phenomenon by appearing in pop hits from big artists such as Whitney Houston, Janet Jackson, and Madonna, before branching out into a bunch of different subgenres. This main house genre, though, is typically categorized by 4-on-the-floor drums, and then claps, and then offbeat hi-hats, with the tempo often around 120 BPM. Alright, now that we know what the basics of house music is, let's hop into Cubasis and start breaking down this track. Now what we're going to do first is play you this track, and then walk you through the various elements by breaking down the different sections of the track, such as drums, melody, and bass. And do keep in mind that we pretty much only used our completely free Essentials House sample pack to build this track, and you can grab that for free right now at MobileMusicPro.com/free. Alright, now let's go ahead and get started with this song demo. Alright, sounding pretty good there, but there's definitely a few things that I would change, but of course there's only so much time to work on these tracks before the next video is due, and the show must go on. Now the first section we're going to start out with is going to be the drums. And as we mentioned at the top of the video, house music typically ranges between 120 and 128 BPM, so for this project we started out at 120 BPM. Now the drums in most house genres are pretty simple, and are made up of three main elements, which is going to be the kick, the hat, and the clap. So what you're going to do is put the kicks on every one here, like that. And then you're going to put the clap on the 2 and the 4. And then finally, you're going to put some kind of hat sound on the half beat here, right in the center of the rest of the drums. And now that we know the basics of how to create house drums, let's take a look at what we did for this track. Here you can see we do have those basic elements like the kick, clap, open hat, and closed hat, but we also threw some additional elements in here like the snare and the percussion. And during the breakdown portions of the track, we actually used a soft kick here, which is basically the same kick, but filtered down and at a much lower volume. So let's bring in these elements one by one now, and hear what they sound like. Alright, now that percussion might have been a little loud, but it does sound okay in the mix. And then finally, you probably heard some processing on there. You can see that we are sending a few of these tracks to the reverb send over here, including the clap, the open hats, and the closed hats here as well. And each of those has varying levels of reverb being sent. And that is about all there is for the drum section. And the next section we're going to talk about is going to be the chords. Now the chords are also another very important element of house music. And there's some pretty typical patterns that get used over and over again. So here you can see we do have a piano track right here. The two piano tracks below it have identical MIDI, but as far as their sound, they're actually only mostly there to add more texture. But if we bring up the MIDI here, you'll be able to see this very specific pattern, which is going to be that familiar dun 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 dun, which is essentially kind of an offbeat or a very swung pattern. We can just listen to this play for a second. And the reason why the chords are placed like this is to create that very specific house groove. And for these chords, typically some kind of piano is used. Here we're just using the stock piano inside of Cubasis, but pretty much any type of bright piano will work, depending of course on the vibe that you're going for. Now typically besides these house pianos, what you'll find is a string that usually holds one note in the background. But I went a little bit of a different route here, a little bit more of an EDM or melodic house route, where instead in the background I kind of wanted a more of a pad sound, and I definitely wanted to follow the chord progression instead of just that one hanging note. So if we take a look here at our chords, and when we bring these up, you can see that they are indeed following that exact same chord progression, instead of just having one note in the background. So let's play these. And you probably also noticed the sidechain effect going on there in the background. Sometimes this is used in house music, but usually not. Again, it all depends on the type of vibe that you're going for and what type of specific genre you're trying to nail. And if we take a look at what sound these are using and pull that up, that is going to be the stock synth inside of Cubasis 3, the micro log, and we can see this is using the Pad 3 preset from our free House Essentials sample pack. Now we can play all these together and hear what they sound like. And that is about it for the chord section. Alright, and now let's get into the bass section. Now this is another area that can trip you up if you're new to house music. I know it definitely messed me up when I first started. But one of the secrets to house music is actually copying your piano pattern over to your bass pattern. Or in other words, mirroring the exact same pattern you have for your chords, but for your bass. So if we take a look here, we'll bring up our piano first. There's that very specific house pattern. 2 spaces here, 2 spaces here, and 1 space after that. And this is inside of a 16th note grid. If we pull up our bass now, you can see the same pattern, 2 spaces, and 1 space. So now both our bass and our piano will hit at the same time, which is extremely important for that familiar house groove. So let's take a listen and show you what we mean. What we're going to do first is solo our piano track, and then we're going to bring in the bass. And what I want you to notice is that the bass now sits behind that piano, and together they can really create that groove. So you can hear the timing of that bass is definitely critical. Usually you got to make sure that you do sync that right to your chords. And as far as the sound goes, it's typically single oscillator square waves, but for this one we went with a little bit more of a saw sound. We could take a look at what preset we used, and that is going to be bass 5, again coming from our Essentials House Sample Pack. Another thing I typically love to do in pretty much every electronic genre is adjust that filter a little bit right before the end of the measure. But like I said, I didn't get a whole lot of time to work on this track, so maybe next time. Alright, now the next section of the video that we'll be covering is going to be the melody and counter melody. Now you can see we definitely have a little bit of processing on here. We have our channel strip, studio EQ, a bit of stereo width there, a sidechain app, and of course we do filter this in and out throughout the different parts of the song. Now the melody sounds typically in house or progressive house or melodic house is usually going to be some type of detuned synth. Here we opted to use pads in the background instead of that sustained string, but nevertheless you are typically going to use some type of detuned synth for the main melody. And of course, the presets we're using are available in our completely free Essentials House Sample Pack. For the melody track, we're using lead 01, and then for the counter melody, we're using lead 2. Now, typically melodies in pretty much any house genre is going to be fairly simple, because again, the most important thing is going to be that groove. So you really don't want too many other elements interrupting that. And so following that idea of keeping the melody simple, we can take a look at our MIDI here and see that it pretty much is just those back-to-back notes following the chord progression. And due to the spacing of these 16th notes, it is going to follow along with that house groove just perfectly. And it really is a super simple melody, like we said, it's only about 4 bars long here, but it repeats throughout the song. So let's hear what this sounds like, and then we'll play the counter melody with it as well. Alright, and that is about it for the melody. Just make sure to keep it simple, typically between 8th and 16th notes, and try to keep those notes in between the drums to keep the groove going. And the final section we'll be discussing today is going to be the transition effects. Now we used about 4 or 5 different sounds here, and those are all going to be highlighted in yellow. I typically make my drums orange, my FX yellow, my bass green, my main melodies red, and then my chords blue or purple. So it looks like we have about 5 different effects, so let's hear what those sound like. So first up we have our long transition sound here, and that's going to be played at the beginning and then during the bridge. can hear there's kind of an impact there at the beginning, which adds a bunch of atmosphere. And next up we have this riser sound here, which is actually going to have a filter cutoff on the end of it. So let's hear that. Those type of transition sounds or risers work really well right before you go into a drop. And then we got a couple of different uplifters over here that also have a bit of a downlifter baked into them as well. And then finally, we have a little guy over here, which is going to be used right before the bridge, right before that long downlifter there, and then right before the final chorus. So let's hear what that sounds like. And depending on the type of house genre that you're building, there's usually some type of vocal sample or vox sample as well. I just didn't have the time to put one of those in here. But if you are making house music, you probably want to have some type of vocal sample as well. Alright, and now it's time again for our final thoughts. And if you are still rocking with us, we just can't thank you enough for being here, especially those folks that are here every single Wednesday and Friday to watch our live streams and our live premieres. Now we hope you did enjoy that track breakdown, because these types of videos are definitely one of my favorite to create. And we have a bunch of these on the channel already, including videos on how to create a pop track, a trap track, a lo-fi track, and a synthwave track. And we will be creating a bunch more of these as we release new sample packs in different genres. And I really also love these types of videos because, hey, if I'm asking you guys to create a track like this for our contest, then it's really only fair that I create one as well. But definitely let us know what you thought of this track and the breakdown in the comments below. And speaking of the contest, we just recently revealed the top 4 prize winners and put them up on the website for everybody to see. And a huge shout out to those top 4 prize winners, which were Stephen Tucker, Henry aka Freaky Daddy, Doug Knack, and MediaWeb Records. But don't worry if you didn't win, because we will be having many more contests and giveaways in the future. And if you do want to be informed when we're going to have those brand new contests, sample packs, giveaways, and more, definitely sign up for our completely free newsletter at MobileMusicPro.com/newsletter. And so, until next time everybody, keep talking music, and we'll see you later. Hey everybody, Vortex here, and if you're not aware yet, we now have over 100 fully edited mobile music tutorial videos. And we make music every single Wednesday live on our channel right inside of Cubasis on our iPad. Plus, we also have a bunch of free sample packs, guides, and more at our website at MobileMusicPro.com/free. And so if you are into that sort of thing, producing music on your iPhone or iPad, then definitely make sure to subscribe and check out the rest of the videos on the channel that we know you'll love.